Hey.
Thank you for watching Conquer with Chris, the podcast you just don't want to miss. Today I have a special guest. I have Dr. Holden. Dr. Holden, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Oh, it's all my pleasure. Listen, we're going to find out all about Dr. Holden in a moment, but please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Dr. Holden, so how did you get to where you are today? Let's hear your story. How did you start off life?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm born and raised here in Atlanta, and raised in a two-parent household, but I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, had 4 kids by the time I was 22. And at 35 years old, after leaving an abusive marriage, it ended after 10 years, I found myself homeless in the streets of Atlanta with 6 children, and we were homeless for 4 years. So in the last 12 years, I went from being homeless to running for city council in the 2017 election, from a GED to a doctorate in leadership studies, a 13-time published author, and I've just released my first comic book last year.
And that's it there, the light show rule?
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's talk about a little bit about this, though, because there's a whole lot to unpack there, right? A whole lot. I've been homeless, too. I actually lived out of my car. I actually had a car. At least I had that. But I didn't have a place to stay a couple times in my life. And so I didn't have any children, though. So that must have been very difficult.
Oh my God. Difficult probably is a real nice word. To be homeless for 4 years. And then for me in the big city of Atlanta, to be 35 homeless with a GED, it was hard. It was very hard working my way up from rock bottom. At that time, I had 2 kids in high school, 2 kids in middle school, 2 kids in elementary. So mentally, I was maxed out. I mean, it was only by the grace of God. But I knew I had to do something to change the trajectory of my family's life. I had 12 eyes watching me. And I definitely didn't want my children to get pulled into the school to prison pipeline, drugs, gangs, just mess up their life. And so, Chris, I just decided when we was in a board up house that I was going to do something to fight for my family, at least try. And I enrolled in college when we were squatters.
So you enrolled into college while you were a squatter?
Yes.
That is remarkable. Now, see, this is something, I'm going to talk to the audience just for a second. This is something that people don't think. You might have been physically homeless, but your mentality wasn't there. See, there's a lot of people who are homeless, but mentally, but they have a place to stay. Address that for a minute, because the thing is like we have a lot of people who coming up and in different age groups, they think they're owed something. And I think that one of the things is I think you can address this probably better than I can, is you went out and got what you had to get where you had to be.
I mean, you know what, to be honest with you, the human side of me really wanted to go run and hide somewhere. I didn't really know where to start. I'm just being honest. I mean, the mental shift that had to take place was almost just as unbearable as being homeless. Because to be 35, you're pretty much where you're going to be at for the most part. I mean, your mindset, where your goals. So for me, it was the mental shift. But I made a vow. I just made a vow to my 6 children that the jails was not going to house them, nor the streets was going to raise them. And I just went to work. Like I said, nothing was planned out. I didn't start this journey out. I'm going to run for city council. I'm going to become an author. The more I just started to trust God. I wasn't raised in the church, but the more I started to trust God, my path slowly began to unwind before me.
Wow. So you said you were homeless for 4 years. So what was it like? Because I wasn't homeless that long, but I remember when I was staying in my car and I got my apartment, I literally cried. And I'm sure you were doing something. How was it like when you got your first place?
Well, actually, we was homeless 2 years before I enrolled in college and 2 years my undergrad. So what broke the homeless thing was I had been on the school, my college family housing waiting list for 2 years. And a family housing finally came available. And I tell you, it was the first time in 4 years that I can take a breath of relief. It was like you said, it was wow. Yeah, it's
so Go ahead.
No, I was just, it was, yeah, that was just the first time I could just relax for a minute mentally, because I was mentally exhausted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell people what kind of traits you use. What are some of the things that you use to break that cycle for yourself?
Well, I remember one of my undergrad professors, Professor Good, told the class that the world belongs to those who are disciplined. So for me, being homeless, I had to almost embody the art of discipline. I had to know, I had to learn time management. So for me, I would definitely say I had to learn the art of discipline to accomplish what I've been able to do in 10 to 12 years. Is definitely the art of discipline was there. But first of all, and then I had to rely on God. Now, Pastor Chris, you say you're a minister? Because it just slipped out.
I am a pastor, yes.
Okay, Pastor Chris, I'm gonna be honest with you. Now the journey got so hard because I'm an ordained pastor as well. I often pose the question to people: what happens when your struggle outlasts your strength? We all can go through something for a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks, but what happens when it becomes years and it seems like God has just have forgotten you and you no longer exist in his sight? So, that's when you really just start to, to see what you're made of. But I remember the journey got so hard, Chris, because I wasn't raised in the church. But I remember walking into a hospital here in Riverdale, Georgia. And I told the lady at the desk when I walked in through those glass doors, I said, ma'am, I can't do this anymore. I was looking frazzled. And she said, ma'am, are you saying you want to commit suicide? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm tired. Pastor Chris, I tell you, the humiliation and embarrassment from being homelessness and knowing my kids wanted stuff, it had started to weigh on me. And they admitted me for a week in the hospital, Pastor Chris. But on that floor, they had a padded room. And I asked the lady at the desk, I said, ma'am, can I go into that room? She said, ma'am, you're no threat to anybody. I said, I know, but I need to go in there. Pastor Chris, when I went in there once every day for the week I was there. And I would just remember dropping down to my knees, crying out, God, are you there? Please help me. I don't have anything. I'm scared and I'm lost. And I would just cry out to him day after day. I was there for that week, Pastor Chris. But when they released me, although my situation did not immediately turn around, I knew something was different. And before I knew it, I had matriculated through college with my AA, my BA, my MBA. But Pastor Chris, when I got accepted into the PhD program for leadership studies, now I did want to bungee jump up to heaven and high five a man.
I think that's critical. I think when you were in that hospital for that week, and when you went to that padded room, you were just giving it all to God. And I think that's critical. Is you said something that says the test of your strength, and at the end of the day is we're all frail, we're all weak,
yes,
and we're all going to fall short. The test is how quickly you can turn it over. Because look at this: the children of Israel took a 3-day trip and turned it to 40 years.
Wow. Yes.
And we tend to do that. Like humans, we tend to complicate things. We want to make it as complex as possible because then we feel like we're doing something.
Yeah.
At the end of the day is we're all like babies. A baby can't change its own diaper. And when your life gets full of crap, only God can change you. Only God can change the situation. Only God can fix it. And at the end of the day is too many times we get caught up in our own greatness, in our own, and that's really what gets people stuck. And I want to, since I'm talking, I'm just going to address this. There are many people who were like you, who are like you, or were like you were, I should say.
Yeah.
But they don't have the evidence. So you had outward manifestation of a stronghold, the stronghold of depression, the stronghold of pride, the stronghold of, and it manifests itself in homelessness, and itself in poverty. And the thing is like, there are some things that if we address them, we figure out how much pride they actually have. When you hate someone because, one of the biggest things going on now is like racism. People talk about racism. Racism is the stupidest thing. Why is it stupid? Because you don't like someone because they're different than you, and you're telling God that he mispainted someone, he miscolored someone. Now you're better than God. Who do you think? I remember hearing a preacher say, he said, if you could sue God, what police officer is going to bring him to court? And what judge is going to see that case? So even if you could try to threaten God with some kind of craziness like that, I think the problem is with racism, it's just a pride issue. And most of what we deal with is pride as human society, human nature. Like, I think I should have this, so I don't feel good about myself because I don't have X, Y, and Z. So how would you tell someone who's getting started today, maybe it's a younger person, maybe it's someone like you who's 35 plus, and just realize their life's not together? How would you address them?
Well, I mean, if you find yourself in a situation, you're mid-30s and you're feeling like your life is over, or you don't know where to go. Pastor Chris just said something first. I'm not being cliche. Pastor Chris, I don't believe is, you definitely have to surrender to whatever your higher power is. There was no way physically, or I didn't have it. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the connections. There was no way I could have done without depending on him what I've been able to accomplish in the last 12 years without his guidance. I mean, I just didn't have it. So if you find yourself lost, first of all, I want to tell you this. This is what I had to get to. I realized, and whoever's watching or listening, if you feel like I don't have family members, I don't have support, I don't have this, the wilderness place is a painful place to be in, but it's a powerful place to be in at the same time. So if you find yourself in the wilderness experience, just know that although it's painful, it's powerful. The reason why it's painful because you're in a place, I call it the spiritual boot camp. You're in a place where God is pruning you, taking off all the stuff that the world has attached itself to you so he can be able to elevate you to where you're going. It's a powerful place because God is preparing you for your next destiny. So for whoever is in that place, just know, you just have to drown out the naysayers. Along my journey, I realized that the people who do the most talking are those that ain't doing the walking. Anybody that has the time to judge you, critique you, tell you you're not good enough, what I find out, if you pay attention to those people, they're the ones on the sidelines. They don't have the guts to get in the ring. They don't have the guts to get in the fight. So what they're doing, they trying to discourage you because they see you have the courage to at least try. So what I did was I had to put on my blinders and drown out the noise of everybody around me and focus on my end goal. And that was to just follow after Jesus. And the more you follow, for me, I'm a Christian. So for me, I had to follow after, the principles and guidelines in the word. But one thing I tell people, God did not magically transform my life. Now he has the power to. I had to be a willing participant in my own deliverance.
Yep. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we hear as Christians. Like there's a scripture, a lot of preachers like to use, the wealth of the wicked laid up for the righteous. But here's the problem with that. It's not just God doesn't counterfeit. God doesn't make nothing counterfeit. So he's not going to send money from heaven. He's not going to give you a card from, there's no ATM cards coming from heaven. Matter of fact, there's no mail coming from heaven, not like normal mail. And so let me tell you, you've got, like she said, you got to be an active participant in you getting wealthy. Yes. You can't just, God's going to bless me. No, you got to pray like it depends on God, act like it depends on you.
Awesome.
Dr. Holden, so what are you doing now? You just released your comic book. So what are you up to now? What are you excited about to share with the people?
Well, I released my first leadership book last year called Leadership Principles, The Power of Personal Development. One thing, I'm big on personal development because what people don't know, I remember a quote by Dr. Miles Monroe. He said, adversity introduces man or woman to themselves. And that's what the purpose of adversity does. But if you do not invest into your personal development, you only going to go so far. We have too many public successes and private failures. So I definitely wrote my leadership book for aspiring and emerging leaders in ministry and the marketplace. So I wrote it to get into churches for their new ministers training class. So Pastor Chris, you got to get one for me. But it's for leaders in training. And so my life story, no longer lost, from homelessness to overcomer. Last year, I was named Georgia Mother of the Year. And I was also named National Mother of the Year by American Mothers, Inc. When I got the national title, I made United States history as the 85th woman to ever hold that title. And so right now I'm an inspirational speaker. As you see behind me, I'm the CEO of Phoenix Rising. Phoenix Rising is where I do leadership trainings, personal development, and empowerment. So I'm just inspiring people around the world that they have the power to rewrite their story.
Well, listen, you were in the lowest of lows, and you rose up like a phoenix, right? So
Yes.
it's funny because Atlanta actually had that kind of as a symbol for a while. They used I forget what term it was, but they had a term that meant rising. And then even Atlanta, the Falcons have rise up.
Oh, yeah.
But how can people get in contact with you, Doctor?
You can, all of my books are on Amazon, but if you want a personalized, a signed copy, you can go on my website. If you want to book a coaching session at www.drlatarshaholden.info, INFO, or you can email me at Latarsha Holden, LATARSHA, Holden, HOLDEN, Latarsha Holden at yahoo.com. Or if you want to call and book a coaching session, you can reach us at 404-838-9587. And I'm on 3 major social media sites that I operate daily: LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Wow. I can't wait to see how everyone responds to this and gravitates to you, because I think you have a lot of things that you've had to learn and that you have a lot to share. This is something I like to do. What is your favorite quote?
Oh my goodness. Well, the favorite quote that I used to run for city council when I came out of homelessness and once I graduated from college, Nelson Mandela said, how can he enjoy the limited freedom that he had when his sisters and brothers were not free? I believe that God does not bring us thus far only for us, that we have a moral duty to go back and try to fight for others. And that's the reason I ran for city council in the 2017 election.
Wow, that's powerful. I just finished reading a book. This is a book mentioned from me, Grant Cardone, 10X. He said, becoming wealthy is your duty. Doing well in life is your duty to your fellow man, because you might have to hire someone who doesn't have that drive and desire that you have. So that's my book quote for book push for today, besides yours. Tell the people what the name of your leadership book is again.
Leadership Principles, the power of personal development. And so actually, Pastor Chris, that's how I was able to save my 6 children from the gangs, the streets. Right before we went into the deepness of homelessness, where, we had to live in shelters, cars. And this is how I saved my 6 children. I came to them 12 years ago and I said, well, I don't have a lot to offer you guys materially, but what I do have to offer you is to love you unconditionally and to show you how to serve. And at that time, the older folks were like, Mom, what are you talking about? We don't have anything. How can we help somebody else? I said, I know it, but if I can teach you all how to give back now at our Lord's, I believe I've given you all a strong foundation to build on to become great leaders. Now, Pastor Chris, to my surprise, although they grumbled and complained, I got the newspaper articles where we did the events. I just posted, matter of fact, on LinkedIn. They one by one came to me. My son now, he'll be 32 this year. He came to me his senior year in high school. He said, Mother, by what you showed me about leadership and serving, my way of giving back is joining the United States Marine Corps. He medically retired after 10 and a half years. Now he's a second-year college student, graduated in May with his associate's degree in accounting. Another son became a caretaker. My daughter came to me and said, Mom, my way of giving back is going to the medical field. She's an EMT, a licensed pharmacy tech. She's in her 3rd year of college. Another daughter came and said, Mom, by what you showed me about service to others, I'm going into the human service field. She graduated last year with her bachelor's in human services. She joined the United States Army 3 years ago. My 19-year-old daughter is now a 4-time published author, spoken word artist, and just launched her first tabletop game for kids. And my 18-year-old son, Omega, Pastor Chris, he's the last and the end. There's no more coming after Omega. Omega's 18. He's a senior in high school, youth leader. And so for me, I know ministry starts at home. And for me, God, I tell you, and Pastor Chris, God has even allowed me to see my 9-year-old grandson become an author right before Christmas just passed. So now my children's children are being blessed because I did not give up in the midst of the crucible.
Well, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been my guest, Dr. Holden. Before we go, though, I want to have a final thought. She says something very key. She said she talked to them about leadership and serving. I don't think there's any difference between the two. Every leader serves. If you lead, you have to serve. There's no other way about it. Servanthood leadership is the only real type of leadership that works. You can have authoritative that doesn't work because you come across as a bully. Servant leadership is the only way that it works.
Yes.
I want to thank my guest, Dr. Holden. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch you the next time. This has been Conquer with Chris.